The feasts of the Lord are very specific. God gave 7 in the Old Testament, seven feasts. The Jews added 2, so it makes 9. So if you ever see a candelabra or a menorah, some menorahs have 7, some menorahs have 9. God gave 7 feasts. The Jews added 2. They added Purim, and then they added the Feast of Lights, which is Hanukkah. They added those 2 feasts, and they added a feast day to their calendar related to great victories that God gave them. The important thing to know about feasts, and this is very important, God says, these are my feasts, and these will be holy convocations. So when he says feasts, he uses the word mikra, which is the word appoint or rehearsal. Say it with me. A feast was a rehearsal. And he said convocation, it's the Hebrew word moed, and it means appointment. And so what he's telling them is on these feasts, you're gonna rehearse some things. You're all going, so the feasts are all about these rituals and all about these rehearsals. If you've ever been to a Passover Seder, you're thinking you're going for a dinner party, right? And you're eating like 3 hours later, right? Because there's all this rehearsal stuff going on before they actually, when's the food coming out, Carmen? Where is that lamb roast that was promised? We got another hour. What? You know what I'm talking about? Anybody know what I'm talking about here? Anybody at all? Right? But because the feast was about a rehearsal. It's about a performance. So when Passover, they would come and there would be a performance. All of the people would have to participate in this performance, and they would have to drill it into their head. And it was drilled into their head. It became so ritualistic. If you were a boy or a girl and you were raised with this, you would know what was going to happen before it even happened. And the reason that they were rehearsing the feast is because on that day, God promised to do something. He said, you're going to rehearse for a day when I will fulfill an appointment to you. And so they would rehearse at Passover. Anybody know what happened at Passover? Jesus was crucified. You understand that? Jesus was crucified. 3 days after Passover begins another feast, the Feast of First Fruits. Anybody know what happened 3 days after Jesus was crucified? He was resurrected. What? The firstborn, first fruits of the resurrection from the dead. Fulfilling Passover, fulfilling first fruits. And during that week, he was declared sinless, which he actually, so if you really want to get down on it, the first 3 feasts he fulfilled immediately. The Feast of Unleavened Bread. So you have the Feast of Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, and you have the Feast of First Fruits. Jesus fulfilled Passover. He was declared sinless before he was crucified, fulfilling the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and he was raised on the very day of First Fruits. Fulfilled them. So all their lives they were rehearsing, and Jesus shows up. He's the one to fulfill the appointment. He fulfills the appointment, and he's like, boom, there it is. Pentecost. Pentecost is an interesting feast. Anybody know what happened on the day of Pentecost? Come on, help me out. We got Christians in the room. Anybody here? Holy Spirit came. What does the Bible say in the book of Acts? When the day of Pentecost had what? Fully come. It wasn't the day before. It wasn't the day after. It was the day of Pentecost. And so what the priests would do on the day of Pentecost, they would go out. So it was the barley harvest. They would have to go out and they would cut down the first fruit of the barley harvest. And then they would come in and they would cut the sheaves, and the priests would go towards the temple waving palm branches. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. You get the picture? Rushing wind going towards the temple. And then they would pour water down the steps of the temple. And you get the picture, right? And freely we drink of the fountain of salvation. They would quote scriptures and they would do different things, but they performed this ritual, and all of the males were supposed to be there to watch the crucifixion, they were there to be there to celebrate Passover, because on one specific day, Jesus was going to be crucified, and that would be a Passover like no other. And how many knows if you're from Macedonia and you went there, you're going to go, I don't know what happened this Passover, man, but this was crazy. This was crazy. The whole city was in an uproar, and they crucified this dude. Right? And then he rose from the dead. He rose from the dead. You get the picture? They were to be witnesses of what God did in the appointments that he had made with his ancestry for their whole life. And they were to take that and bring it into the world. They were to take the message that they had received and they were to bring it to their families. They were to bring it to their households. They were to bring it to the ends of the earth, literally. This was the idea. Listen, God performs in time and on time. You understand that? He doesn't stutter. There are 3 feasts that are yet to be fulfilled, and people don't think they're going to be fulfilled. You're out of your mind. He's going to fulfill them. on the day, on the hour, at the moment, in time, on time. And people say, oh, well, those feasts require a temple. Wait and see. Temple's on its way. It's coming, right? These feasts couldn't even be fulfilled until Israel became a nation. This nation didn't exist for 2,000 years. The Romans destroyed it, and it was trampled underfoot. And the Lord said, at the time of the end, when the time of the Gentiles is being fulfilled, these things will come to pass. Israel became a nation after 2,000 years. 1948. 1967, I think, they took Jerusalem. Now everybody's like kind of going, oh, wow, this is actually possible, right? They're like, well, they still got to build the temple. They still got to build the temple. You really? You think that's the hard part of this? Building a temple? Gee, there will be a temple in Jerusalem. And the prophetic timetable will be fulfilled just as he said. Make no mistake.